My sister mocked still renting at your age and boasted about her apartment until the manager revealed the truth that made her beg for forgiveness. The dining room smelled of rosemary and pretension. Mom's antique crystal glasses caught the light from the chandelier, the one my sister Olivia had insisted they buy to upgrade the ambiance. Everything about our monthly family dinners was designed to showcase success, or at least the appearance of it. I sat quietly, cutting my roast beef into precise squares while Olivia dominated the conversation, and then she gushed, swirling her wine. James and I just fell in love with Unit 4 Billions at the Mason. You know that luxury complex downtown? The views are absolutely incredible. Mom beamed. Oh, honey, that's wonderful. Those units are so exclusive. They are, Olivia opined. The wait list is usually months long, but James knows people. She turned to me, her smile sharp as a paper cut. What about you, Sarah? Still in that little rental on Oak Street? I took a small sip of water. Yes, still there. Oh, her tone dripped with fake sympathy. Well, I suppose not everyone can afford to live somewhere nice. The Mason has such strict income requirements. She laughed, the sound like wind chimes made of ice. Poor thing, still paying rent at your age. Dad cleared his throat uncomfortably. Mom suddenly became very interested in her napkin. But Olivia wasn't done. You know, if you'd focused more on your career instead of all those investment courses you were always taking, maybe you could afford something better by now. I placed my fork down carefully. 10 years of calculated silence, of letting them believe what they wanted to believe, had led to this moment. I pulled out my phone, scrolling through my contacts with deliberate slowness. Actually, Olivia, speaking of the Mason, I hit dial and put the phone on speaker, the room filled with soft ringing. Hello, Miss Anderson. How can I help you? Miss Wilson's crisp, professional voice carried clearly across the dinner table. Hi, Ms. Wilson. This is Sarah Anderson, the owner. I need you to prepare a notice for Unit 4 Billions. Their lease won't be renewed next month. The silence that followed was absolute. Olivia's wine glass froze halfway to her lips. Mom's fork clattered against her plate. Of course, Ms. Anderson. I'll prepare the paperwork right away. Would you like me to deliver it personally or send it through mail? Personal delivery, please. Tomorrow morning would be perfect. Consider it done. Anything else? No, that's all. Thank you, Ms. Wilson. I ended the call and returned to my roast beef, taking another small, careful bite. The meat had gone cold, but I barely noticed. I was too busy watching the color drain from Olivia's face as realization dawned. You're lying, she stammered. This is some kind of joke. I reached into my bag and pulled out a slim leather portfolio. Inside was the deed to the Mason, along with quarterly revenue reports and tenant listings. I slid them across the table without a word. But how? Mom's voice was barely a whisper. Remember all those investment courses you mocked? The ones that were wasting my time while Olivia was climbing the corporate ladder? I smiled slightly. Turns out they were quite useful. I bought the Mason 3 years ago through my holding company, along with 6 other properties in the city. Dad picked up the papers with trembling hands. These numbers, Sarah. This is... Yes, Dad. Your struggling daughter manages a real estate portfolio worth just over $40 million. I turned to Olivia, whose face had shifted from shock to something closer to horror. And yes, sis, the Mason does have very strict income requirements. Unfortunately, you and James fall just short of them for next year's lease terms. You can't do this, Olivia's voice cracked. We just finished decorating. We hosted a housewarming party last week. Actually, I can. It's my building. I stood up, smoothing my simple black dress. But don't worry, I hear there are some nice rentals available on Oak Street. Mom found her voice. Sarah, be reasonable. Your sister didn't mean... Yes, she did. I cut her off gently. She meant every word, every smirk, every subtle dig over the years. You all did. I picked up my bag, leaving the portfolio on the table. You were so busy looking down on me, you never bothered to look up and see what I was building." "Please?" Olivia begged, her voice cracking with raw desperation that echoed through the tense air of the dining room. "James's clients, our friends, we've told everyone we'd be staying here for at least a year. You can't just pull the rug out from under us like this." I stopped right at the threshold of the dining room door, my hand lingering on the frame for a moment longer than necessary. Turning slightly, I met her pleading eyes with a calm that had been building inside me for years. "You know what's truly ironic about all this?" I said, my tone steady and unflinching. "If you'd ever bothered to show even a flicker of real curiosity about my world, asked about my job, my dreams, treated me with the simplest shred of respect instead of constant disdain, I would have handed you that apartment on a silver platter. Family discount, no questions asked, just because we're blood." I let the words hang there, heavy and unyielding, before adding one final glance over my shoulder. "But let's be honest with ourselves. We're not family in any meaningful way, are we? We're just strangers tied together by some shared DNA and these awkward monthly dinners where everyone pretends to care." The silence that crashed down after my departure was deafening, a thick blanket smothering the room as I stepped out into the cool evening air. It followed me all the way to my car parked in the driveway, a reliable, unassuming Honda Civic that had been the butt of their endless jokes for as long as I could remember. "Still driving that old thing?" they'd sneer, oblivious to the sleek Porsche 911 tucked away in my private garage downtown, or the sprawling beach house in Malibu where I escaped on weekends to recharge amid crashing waves and endless horizons. They had no clue about the startup incubator I'd quietly funded last year, pouring millions into innovative minds that were already disrupting industries. They didn't know the half of it, the late nights negotiating deals, the risks I'd taken to build something from nothing, the quiet satisfaction of watching my investments bloom while they dismissed me as the perpetual underachiever. As I slid into the driver's seat and turned the key, the engine humming to life with familiar reliability, a profound realization washed over me, driving away from their immaculate suburban haven, the manicured lawns, the cookie-cutter perfection that masked their shallow priorities. I felt an unshackling. They never truly saw me, not the real me beneath the surface they'd always scratched at with their judgments, and now, as the streetlights blurred into streaks of gold against the darkening sky, I understood with crystal clarity they never would. Because I wasn't merely the anonymous owner of their coveted luxury apartment building, the one they'd lorded over their social circle like a trophy. No, I was the architect of my own destiny, the silent force behind an empire they'd unwittingly benefited from. For the first time in a full decade of swallowing their barbs and playing the role of the invisible sibling, I was reclaiming my narrative. I was done dimming my light to fit into their narrow frame. My phone began vibrating incessantly in the cup holder, a barrage of notifications lighting up the screen. First came Olivia's messages, frantic and pleading, "Please, sis, let's talk this out." Then Mom chimed in with her guilt-laden classics, "How could you do this to your own flesh and blood?" Dad followed suit, his texts laced with anger masking panic. "This is unacceptable, call me now!" Each one escalated in desperation, a digital storm of entitlement and regret. I reached over, silenced the notifications with a decisive swipe, and tossed the phone into the passenger seat. No more distractions. The road ahead was mine alone, leading straight to the heart of downtown, where the Masons' towering glass facade pierced the night sky like a beacon of my triumph. My tower, built brick by brick on foundations of perseverance they couldn't comprehend. My rules, forged in the fires of their neglect. My victory, sweet and hard-won. Sometimes silence isn't merely absence. It's a weapon, sharp and precise. Sometimes it's the ultimate strategy, allowing you to amass power while the world underestimates you. And sometimes, in those rare, pivotal moments, it constructs empires that rise unseen, brick by invisible brick, until they are impossible to ignore, while others remain blinded by their own arrogance, too busy critiquing to witness the ascension. The following morning, I settled into the plush leather chair of my private office on the penthouse floor of the Mason, the city sprawling out below me like a living tapestry through those expansive floor-to-ceiling windows, the same panoramic views Olivia had flaunted at every cocktail party, every brunch with her elite circle, gushing about the sunrise over the skyline, the twinkling lights at dusk, never once suspecting that her generous landlord was the sister she'd belittled for years, the one providing it all from the shadows. As the first rays of dawn painted the urban landscape in hues of pink and gold, awakening the streets to another day of hustle and possibility, my intercom buzzed softly on the desk. "Miss Anderson, Miss Wilson here. I've just delivered the notice to Unit 4B as requested." "Thank you." How did they take it? Mr. James Davidson was quite vocal. He insisted on speaking with the owner directly. I smiled faintly. "I'm sure he did. Please remind him that all communication needs to go through proper channels. Already done, though." Miss Wilson hesitated. "There's something else. A woman is here to see you. Says she's your mother." I closed my eyes briefly. Of course. Mom always believed she could fix everything with a well-timed emotional appeal. Send her up. 3 minutes later, my office door opened. Mom stepped in, then stopped abruptly. I could see her taking in the space, the modern art on the walls, the custom desk, the view she praised so often in Olivia's apartment, not knowing an even better version existed just floors above. "Sarah." She smoothed her designer blouse, clearly uncomfortable. "This is quite an office." "Thank you. Please sit." I gestured to one of the leather chairs facing my desk. She perched on the edge like she was afraid of settling in. "Honey, we need to talk about what happened last night." "Do we? You can't just evict your sister. Think about how this will look." I leaned back in my chair. "Interesting. Your first concern is appearances, not the fact that your daughters haven't had a real conversation in years. That's not fair. We've always supported you, haven't we?" I opened my laptop, pulling up a folder I'd kept for years. "Let's review, shall we? When I wanted to take that first real estate course, Dad called it throwing money away. When I started my investment company, you told everyone I was between jobs. When I missed Olivia's engagement party because I was closing my first major property deal, you said I was selfish and jealous of her success. We were worried about you. You were so secretive, never telling us anything." I tried. Every dinner, every holiday, I tried to share my work, but you were always too busy praising Olivia's latest promotion or James's new car or their perfect life in their perfect apartment. I closed the laptop softly. The apartment I own. Mom's face crumpled slightly. "Why didn't you just tell us?" "Would you have believed me? Or would you have assumed I was lying to compete with Olivia?" She didn't answer. She didn't need to. We both knew the truth. "The notice stands," I said firmly. "They have 30 days to find new accommodation. Sarah, please. Your sister is devastated. She had to call in sick to work today. James is threatening to..." "To what? Sue?" "He's welcome to try. Every lease agreement is ironclad, and I have documentation of 3 noise complaints against their unit in the past month alone." Mom's eyes widened. "You've been monitoring them." "I monitor all my properties. It's called being a responsible owner." I stood up, signaling the end of the conversation. "Now, if you'll excuse me, I have a meeting with my development team about our new project in Seattle." "Seattle?" She looked lost. "You're expanding there too?" "Among other places." I walked to the door, holding it open. "You know, Mom, all those times you and Dad pushed me to be more like Olivia, to follow her path. Did you ever consider that I was building something bigger than a corner office and a luxury apartment?" She stopped in the doorway, turning to face me. "We just wanted you to be successful. I am successful. You just defined success too narrowly to see it." After she left, I walked to the window, watching her expensive car pull away from the curb. My phone buzzed. A text from Olivia. "This is cruel even for you." I typed back, "No. Cruel is 10 years of subtle digs and public humiliation. This is just business." Another buzz. Mom says you have properties in Seattle now. What else are you hiding?" I smiled but didn't respond. Let her wonder. Let them all wonder. Ms. Wilson's voice came through the intercom again. Ms. Anderson, the development team is ready for you in the conference room. Thank you. Oh, and Ms. Wilson, please start compiling listings for available units in the building. Similar size to 4 billions, but perhaps with slightly less desirable views. For your sister? No. For the 3 families on our waiting list who actually meet our income requirements, it's time to maintain some standards around here. As I gathered my materials for the meeting, I caught my reflection in the window. I looked different somehow. Stronger, clearer, more myself than I'd ever been at those suffocating family dinners. My phone buzzed again. Dad, this time we should talk over dinner, maybe your choice of restaurant. I left it unanswered. They'd had 10 years of dinners to talk to me, to see me, to understand what I was building. Now they could wait, because the empire I'd built in silence, it was just the beginning, and this time I wouldn't be quiet about it. The next week unfolded like a carefully orchestrated symphony of consequences. I sat in my home office, not the modest Oak Street apartment they knew about, but my actual residence, a restored Victorian mansion in the city's most exclusive neighborhood, reviewing the security footage from the Mason. Olivia had shown up every day, alternating between demands and pleas with Ms. Wilson. James had tried legal threats, then bribes, then finally resorted to leaving desperate voicemails about family obligations. I watched it all with a detached sort of fascination, like observing specimens in a lab. Then came the email that changed everything. Ms. Anderson, I represent the Davidson family's interests in several commercial properties downtown. We've recently learned you're the owner of the Mason. I believe we could turn this unfortunate situation into a mutually beneficial opportunity. Perhaps we could discuss over lunch. Best regards, Abraha. Marcus Sterling Abarak, Senior Partner, Sterling and Associates. I laughed quietly. James's father's law firm. Of course, they still thought this was a negotiation. I typed a brief response. Mr. Sterling, thank you for your interest. However, I should inform you that the Mason is just one of 17 properties in my portfolio. This includes the building where Sterling and Associates currently leases its offices. Your lease is up for renewal next quarter. I look forward to reviewing your firm's application along with other potential tenants. Best, Abrache, Sarah Anderson Heberke, CEO, Anderson Holdings. I hit send and waited. 3 minutes later, my phone rang. It was Olivia. You own the Sterling building, too. Her voice shook. Sarah, what are you? A good investor. Something none of you ever bothered to understand. James's father is furious. He's talking about blacklisting you in real estate circles. I smiled, though she couldn't see it. Interesting threat. Has he checked who owns the properties housing the city's top 3 law firms or the new tech complex where his biggest clients are headquartered? Silence. Then, how much do you actually own? Enough to ensure that blacklisting me would be problematic for many influential people. I paused. Including Dad's engineering firm. Their building lease is under review too, by the way. Dad's office. Her voice cracked. Sarah, you can't... What? Make business decisions about my properties? Isn't that what you and James do? What Mom and Dad praised you for? Being tough and business-minded. More silence. Then, softly. What do you want? Want? I looked out my window at the city skyline. My skyline in many ways. I want what I've always wanted. Recognition, respect, a family that sees me for who I am, not who they assumed I'd be. By destroying us? No, Olivia. By showing you who I've become while you were too busy looking down to look up. I sighed. Check your email in an hour. You'll find a list of available properties within your actual budget. Not as prestigious as the Mason, but decent. Consider it a professional courtesy. That's it? That's all you have to say? No. I stood, walking to my wall of achievements, awards, recognitions, magazine covers featuring my properties, all collected over years of work they dismissed as wasting time. I also want you to explain to Mom and Dad why their perfect daughter and son-in-law are moving to a lesser address. Tell them the truth. All of it, including how you treated the sister who could have been your biggest ally. I ended the call and pressed my intercom. Ms. Wilson, please prepare the paperwork for Unit 4B's new tenants, the Thompson family, the ones with the 2 kids in medical school. They meet all requirements, and their reference checks are impeccable. Right away, Ms. Anderson. Oh, and the Seattle development team sent over the final proposals. They're quite impressive. Thank you. I'll review them this afternoon. I sat back down, opening my laptop to check the latest property acquisitions. A notification popped up. Another email from Mom. Sarah, your father and I have been doing some research. The properties, the investments, the scale of what you've built. We had no idea at all. We failed you, not in the way we thought, worrying you weren't successful enough, but by not seeing how extraordinary you actually are. If you're willing, we'd like to learn about your work, your companies, everything we should have asked about years ago. Not to benefit from it, but to understand our daughter. Love, Ebruch, Mom. I read it twice, then pulled up my calendar. After a moment's consideration, I blocked off next Thursday evening and typed, "Dinner at 7, my office. Come ready to listen. Sarah." Then I turned back to my work, to the empire I'd built in silence, to the future I was still creating. Because success isn't just about proving others wrong. It's about proving yourself right. And sometimes the quietest builder creates the tallest towers. Mom's response came quickly. "We'll be there. And Sarah, we're proud of you." We should have said that years ago. I didn't reply. They'd need to prove it with more than words this time. But as I looked out at my city, at the buildings bearing my invisible fingerprints, I felt something shift. Not forgiveness, not yet. But perhaps the foundation of something new. Sometimes the best revenge isn't serving it cold. It's serving it with a side of enlightenment. And as the sun set over my skyline, I smiled, knowing that tomorrow would bring another day of building, growing, and rising. Not in silence anymore, but in the clear, bright light of truth. Because I wasn't just Sarah Anderson, the overlooked sister. I was Sarah Anderson, CEO, property mogul, empire builder. And finally, everyone knew it.